Hello everybody! My name is Alexis and this is CAFYIR. Welcome back to another video. Today we will be discussing note-taking tips and tricks for school. We'll talk about 10 note-taking tips and tricks to help you out with the beginning of the school year. So, without further ado, let's get started! Tip number 1. Collect the key information from a lesson. Well, how in the world are we supposed to do that? How about we find out? It's actually pretty simple to collect the key information in your notes. There is no need to write down every single thing that your teacher says when teaching a lesson. Instead, just take down the main ideas. The main ideas are usually emphasized in a lesson, so take down notes on those emphasized topics. They are usually repeated multiple times, bolded, underlined, or seem to be important, like titles or headings. Now that we know how to keep up with the lesson, how can we make sure we get all of the information we need in our notes? Tip number 2. Use annotations or comments. But what does annotation and comments mean? This means that you should add questions or comments to your notes so that you don't forget you have them. If you have a question about a topic, write it down and look it up later, or ask your teacher after a lesson. That brings us to tip number 3. Compare your notes with other or additional information that you can find. After your lesson, read the textbook or do more research and see if there's any important information you can add to your notes or might have missed in the lesson. You can do research on the internet or go to the library and find a book on the topic that you are learning about. When adding more information though, you want to make sure you can still understand what your notes are talking about. Tip number 4. Organize your information. You always need to find your own organization techniques, but I have a few recommendations you might like. You can organize your notes by including bullet points, borders, or arrows. You can also use thought bubbles, the margins, or headings and subheadings to organize your information in your notes. Another good organization tool, tip number 5, create a key. Let's learn about what type of key you can create in your notes. You can use codes to emphasize important points in your notes. Some examples are underlining, circling, or highlighting important words, phrases, or facts that you have listed in your notes. You can then create a key in the bottom corner to make sure you remember what your codes are talking about. You can also organize your notes by using more than just words. That brings us to tip number 6, draw pictures. Make your notes easier to understand quickly by adding diagrams, charts, or pictures. You can draw out what you were learning in the lesson or use diagrams or charts to organize the information so that it is easier for you to understand and read when studying. Now, that's a lot of notes to keep up with. How do you keep track of it all? We have some tips and tricks for that too. Tip number 7, summarize your notes. Well, how are you supposed to summarize your notes? Once you finish taking your notes, it's always best to write a few sentences talking about the topics you learned so that you can easily look back at what you were talking about in the lesson. Another way to remember what you learned is by making connections. Well, what sort of connections? You can do this by researching what you learned and asking questions. You can research online or go to the library and ask your teacher, a parent or guardian, or even a friend to clarify information you learned in a lesson. Now that your notes are all finished, tip number 9, always review. Read what you wrote and even talk about your notes with a friend so that you can remember what you learned and make it easier to study. You can quiz your friend and they can quiz you, or you can review your notes by yourself by reading them aloud or even rewriting them. Finally, tip number 10, always use a good writing utensil like a pencil or pen. If you use a marker or crayon, you may not be able to go back and read what you are writing down. Now, there's 10 tips and tricks to help you take the best notes in all of your lessons. Remember though, it's important to find what works for you. Try out these tips and tricks and amend them so that you can take the best notes for you to review and study before a test or exam. I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Be sure to like and subscribe to see more animated videos like these. We post new videos every week on all sorts of different lessons and topics. You can also have a parent or guardian follow us on all social media. It's all listed in the description below. Thank you all for watching. Happy note taking, and we'll see you next time. Bye!